Thank you all for coming. I'd like to begin this evening with a short excerpt from Autobiography of a Yogi. This is when Yogananda was on his way to the United States for the first time. He says, "During the 2 months voyage, a fellow passenger found out that I was the Indian delegate to the Boston Congress. Swami Yogananda, he said, with the first of many quaint pronunciations by which I was later to hear my name spoken by the Americans. Please favor the passengers with a lecture next Thursday night. I think we would all benefit by a talk on the battle of life and how to fight it." Alas, I had to fight the battle of my own life, I discovered on Wednesday, desperately trying to organize my ideas into a lecture in English. I finally abandoned all preparations. My thoughts, like a wild colt eyeing a saddle, refused any cooperation with the laws of English grammar. Fully trusting in Master's past assurances, however, I appeared before my Thursday audience in the saloon of the steamer. No eloquence rose from my lips. Speechlessly, I stood before the assemblage. After an endurance contest lasting 10 minutes, the audience realized my predicament and began to laugh. The situation was not funny to me at the moment. Indignantly, I sent a silent prayer to Master. "You can speak!" His voice sounded instantly within my consciousness. My thoughts fell at once into a friendly relation with the English language. 45 minutes later, the audience was still attentive. The talk won me a number of invitations to lecture later before various groups in America. I never could remember afterward a word that I had spoken. By discreet inquiry, I learned from a number of passengers. "You gave an inspiring lecture in stirring and correct English." At this delightful news, I humbly thanked my guru for his timely help, realizing anew that he was ever with me, setting at naught all barriers of time and space. Well, we can learn a lot from that passage, and we can practice, and we probably all do practice. Everyone who's speaking tonight, and anyone who has a guru, anyone who has a spiritual teacher needs to rely on that strength, and hopefully not too much on our own strength, to speak clearly, to speak inspiringly, to speak correctly even in our own language, which we often don't. But before I introduce this evening a little more and talk about why we're all here this evening, I want to share a couple things. One inspiring piece of news is that there are now officially Joy Masters happening in Sacramento, in Palo Alto, and in Italy.
Wow.
So we are now an international movement. No pressure.
We're a franchise.
That's right, we're a franchise. The other story that I wanted to share was about that chant, which Kalidas mentioned last time that Master recommended, or we've somehow discovered that that chant was recommended by Yogananda to use before speaking, before public speaking. And I did a little experiment with that chant because I've been practicing it for some time, and I used it in school. Many of you know that I'm a teacher at the Ananda Living Wisdom School here, and we have a new kirtan group of mostly boys. We had some amazing kirtan singers last year. They've all gone, and so we're rebuilding our kirtan group. Some people in this group, some students, have never heard of kirtan, have never sung at all, and a harmonium is a very strange instrument to them. And so, where do you begin? How do you begin with chanting? How do you even explain it to them? Are they interested even at all? And I've struggled with this endeavor to get them to understand chanting or appreciate chanting in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to talk about flies again. I know at my last talk at the last Joy Masters I talked about flies. They're just a part of my life. So unfortunately, during one kirtan class, I was getting kind of desperate, and I kept chanting, and while I was chanting, I kind of would open my eyes and see some of them looking at the ceiling, and some of them twiddling their thumbs, and some of them had nice jackets on, and they were snuggling into a corner in the wall and kind of dozing. So I obviously wasn't doing a very good job at teaching kirtan. And then I thought of this chant: I will sing thy name, I will drink thy name, I will get all drunk I'll get all drunk with thy name. Because chanting is ultimately a devotional act. Maybe our high school and junior high students aren't interested in devotion. Maybe they don't know what devotion is. But that's the beautiful thing about devotion, is you don't have to understand it. You don't have to know what it is. It's just something you feel. And the words are very simple, so they can all pick it up pretty quickly. And I had to make it fun, so I started singing the chant, and some of them were kind of joining in, and some of them were kind of saying, "Oh God, here comes another chant." And then I started to say, I went into the chorus or the part where you say Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om, and I just kind of opened my eyes and I just started to go across the whole room, and I said Om Sundara, Om Sundara, Om Sundara, Om, Om Nabha, Om Nabha, Om Nabha, Om, Om Sanjanam, and so on and so forth, 19 times across the room, 19 different students. And they all started to chant with me, because it was fun. They got to say their own names. But something happened because I tricked them into chanting, and chanting works. And they were open and uplifted when they were chanting because they were laughing, because they heard their friends' names and they heard their name. And then when I went back to singing the chant, they all started to chant with me, everybody. And it was amazing because when you hear a room full of people chanting versus a couple people chanting is a huge difference. I think they were shocked by the level of participation. And that we chanted that for about 15 minutes, which is insane for a group of teenagers who have dubious relationships with any spiritual path to chant like that. And afterward we had a 5-minute meditation, which was also amazing. And some of them, when they opened their eyes afterward, were just kind of like, they were somewhere else. They were coming from somewhere else. They were coming back in their body. And one student said, "Why is everything blue?" And another student said, "No, why is everything white?" And it was amazing. And I definitely felt, and afterwards we had a long conversation about what bliss is and what joy is and how you feel it, and it's a real thing. And I was so thankful to Master because it's a beautiful chant, and I oftentimes, now when I chant that chant, I have that connection to my students, and it takes me to a very joyful place. And that's what I want to talk about tonight in my brief introduction as your host this evening, is the joy of speaking. I've taught public speaking before. I'm not a very good public speaking teacher. I oftentimes humiliate my students, which is borderline appropriate. I remember once I had a student who was a decent public speaker, but when he spoke, he would do this. He would lift one leg off the ground at a time, and he would give a really good, stirring speech, but he'd be doing this the whole time. And we stopped him several times and told him, "Don't move your feet. Keep your feet planted on the ground. Just try that." And he couldn't do it. He'd last about 30 seconds, and then he'd start vibrating back and forth, and then he'd lift them up again. He was kind of marching. And so I got 2 football players in the class to go lie down on his feet while he gave his talk. And so then he kind of was going like this, but at least he wasn't marching. And I remember once I had a student who would, and this is fairly common, a student who would just lock eyes with one person in the audience, and he'd give his whole talk, and in fact he'd lean in to the person he was speaking to, and then he'd slowly start to pace forward like a tiger stalking a string. And some of these habits are unusual, some of them are strange, but everybody kind of has their own nuts and bolts they need to work through, and I think it's just the nature of standing before an audience. And I remember, perhaps you've heard kind of a stereotypical or joking advice to the public speakers to imagine their audience naked. Maybe you've heard this. Well, suffice it to say, this isn't appropriate advice for a monk. However, I will say that when you stand up in front of an audience, you kind of feel naked. Because when you speak from your heart. And your heart kind of reveals things. The tone of your voice reveals things. It reveals if you're feeling even a little bit nervous, speakers this evening will be able to tell. But if you're feeling joyful, your audience will also be able to tell. And if you're feeling joyful and nervous, then we'll be able to know that you're feeling both joyful and nervous. And so I realized why, if you think that your audience is naked, that might feel better, because it feels kind of like you're naked when you're standing up in front of everybody. One of the most inspiring experiences of my life actually wasn't coming on to a spiritual path, wasn't finding out who my guru was, wasn't learning to meditate for the first time. In fact, the most inspiring experience of my life was the first time I spoke in front of an audience. And the person who I was before that experience was dramatically different from the person that I became after I spoke. It was kind of karmically activating in some ways. And I've spoken to astrologers and to psychics and things, and they've kind of explained this, but it was a powerful experience for me, speaking in public. Why? I don't really understand to this day. I remember once I was walking with a friend through a crowded street on the 4th of July, and we saw this group of patriotic people who were kind of waving flags and eating hot dogs and things like that. And there was a speaker in front of them who was talking about patriotic things like, freedom fries and how awful the French are and things like that, things that rally Americans. And he was kind of ending his speech, and he started to walk towards us to hand the microphone to somebody or put it down, I'm not sure. But the friend that I was with, who I kind of knew pretty well, not that well, he proceeded to march straight towards that man and grab the microphone from his hand. And he marched in front of the audience, and he gave a stirring speech about American ideals, about the true meaning of freedom. And a second earlier, we were talking about what we wanted for dinner, and he just launched right into a speech and gave an amazing speech. He captivated the audience, and my jaw dropped. I was amazed. How did he prepare for that? Where did that come from? Is that even possible? I guess so. And ever since then, I think I've been mystified. I've been intrigued. I wanted to know more about what this is. What does it mean to speak in front of an audience? And of course, many successful speakers also speak from their ego. They speak from what they've learned, what they think they understand, what they know, which is good. We all need to do some of that. You need a strong ego to speak in public. You need to have self-esteem. But then we have examples like Master and Swami, who teach us the true meaning of speaking with clarity. And Master said that our words are crystallized thoughts. And so if our thoughts are clear, we'll produce gemstones, we'll produce crystals, and we'll have clarity. And if our thoughts are a little unclear, we'll produce, like sedimentary rock or something like that. And so even if you don't truly understand your subject, if your mind is clear and you're thinking of something pure, if you're feeling devotion, then I think your speech has clarity, and you truly can crystallize some amazing thoughts. And so I'd just like to end, before I introduce the first speaker this evening, by saying that speaking in public, speaking in front of an audience, speaking with friends, communicating is a dharma that we all share. Wherever you come from, whoever you are, we've all come to earth to learn communication. Unless you feel it's your dharma to be a hermit and to never speak to another soul on earth, which is very rare in today's times, then I think you need to learn how to speak, and we all are out practicing with each other. And sometimes our words can stab like swords, and sometimes our words can heal wounds, and sometimes our words can inspire love for God and the search for truth. And I know that that's what we're practicing this evening. So God bless everyone who's speaking this evening, and everyone who is speaking at Ananda or with Ananda, who talks about truth, who talks about God, who talks about meditation. We're practicing a very high, very refined dharma on this earth. And what an amazing, how amazing is Joy Masters that we have a chance to practice this and refine this art, so that one day maybe our words can touch even one soul and inspire them to reach for God. So God bless you all. Please. Yes. 10 minutes.
I will be speaking tonight on God is for everyone. And I think it was the speech that Master gave on the boat, and then which Kamran read, in which he got the invitation to speak at the Congress of Religious Liberals in 1920. So it was in 1920 that Master gave his talk on the science of religion, and he spoke on how religion is universally necessary for everyone, and how even if you're not religious, and even if you don't know or think you want God, it's something that everyone in their deeper selves want. Not maybe in the traditional dogmatic terms of religion being a set of dogmas, a set of practices that are kind of separate, but the religious experience of being bound back to something higher within ourselves that we say as God. Now, there is an interesting story I read a couple of years ago. It was in the paper. It was from a man who, if you were to say God is for everyone, he would say, no, God is not for everyone. Religion is not for everyone. In fact, religion and God are probably the most terrifying forces that have caused so many problems in this world. And this man is kind of the spokesperson for atheism. His name is Sam Harris. And he was being interviewed, and in this interview, he said that the reporter asked him, okay, we know you're not really for religion, but are you for any type of spirituality? He said, oh, I practice meditation and yoga. Okay, well, as for us, those are religious experiences par excellence. And I recently read something which I thought was very interesting, and I wanted to read it to you now. This is from Sam Harris. He said, there is nothing irrational about seeking the states of mind that lie at the core of many religions. Compassion, awe, devotion, and a sense of oneness. These are surely among the most valuable experiences a person can have. Okay, this is coming from an atheist, but yet he's talking about oneness and about experience. And experience is really the key here when we're trying to make God applicable for everyone. Because, as Master said, if you're trying to describe an orange to someone who has never had citrus, they won't understand what the taste of an orange is. If we try and describe God to someone in religious-specific or Yogananda-specific terms who've never had experience of God, they won't get it. So we should try and maximize those experiences where we give people that experience of God. One moment of deeply joyful, a deeply peaceful experience of their higher selves can completely change the trajectory of their lives. There was, this is an experience that a karma yogi had recently. It's not you, so don't worry. She's a new karma yogi, and she doesn't have much experience on this path. She's quite young, but she's got a very pure heart. I think of her as Bernadette from the Song of Bernadette, the movie. And she wasn't sure about God or the Guru relationship so much. And she was down there meditating in Swamis, and she was not really having any sort of experience. And then she came up in the garden, and she saw somebody walking across the lower gardens, and she said she just felt so much gratitude. And she went back down the Swamis. She kind of kneeled before his seat and just was so grateful. And she said she kind of mentally blew a kiss to Swami. And she said she felt a kiss come back, touch her on the cheek, and she went into ecstasy. And the whole rest of the night, she was completely drunk. And it was joyful at the same time, but she was kind of trying to do her chores like this. And so it was just this deep experience without much knowledge. And then on her birthday, a few days ago, she was praying in morning sadhana to her guru, trying to God say, who is my guru, who is my guru? And she said, before closed eyes, Christ appeared to her on her left, and Master appeared to her on her right. And then after that experience, she knew who her guru was. Now, if we are trying to share these teachings with others, share Master with others, and as we do outreach, it's interesting to think we want to try and give these people these type of experiences, but it's not very easy to do that. But I found a very interesting study. I share a lot with Sharing Nature participants. And in this study, this man wanted to see what gave people those optimal experiences in life that we have, in which we say, that was a defining moment in my life. And he said most people have them at some point or another. Some people have them doing adventure sports, being in nature, doing art, doing something creative, finding the love of our life. And so he did a 25-year study to see what gave people these experiences, if there's anything common to them. And he found that studying people from different races, nationalities, etc., that what was common to every one of these peak experiences was that their energy was high and extremely focused. And isn't that what we're trying to do in meditation, through energization in our practices? And when people were in this state of mind, state of consciousness, they described it as being in a state of flow, where the boundaries between themselves and what they were doing vanished, time and space vanished, and they weren't thinking of themselves. As we try and give people these experiences, and as we move deeper into Dwapara Yuga, I wonder if our whole approach of outreach is going to shift more towards that and less towards talking and lecturing. It's primarily trying to give people more experience, using those two key principles of high energy and focused attention. Now, of course, we do that. We try to do that with our techniques, with energization, but maybe it has to take on a different, more universal tone, because if God is for everyone, it might not come, of course, we know through the specific language we use, our specific path. When I was in high school, that life-transforming moment was when I went on an outward bound trip, and I was paddling down the rapids, and I had the adrenaline rush of going through a set of rapids, and I had this, in the same time, an intense focus. And then we pulled off the beach. It was evening time. There was this beautiful sunlight hitting the canyon wall, and I was so enamored with a deep sense of this joy. I had never had that experience before. I was like altar boy before. And as soon as I went back, I stopped going to church, I stopped being an altar boy, and I went into the woods. And that's what changed my whole path of what I studied in college, and starting to study spirituality more, and eventually got me on this path. Now, I was talking about how we were trying to give these experiences to people. And, you know, Bharat has created something with sharing nature that is really ingenious. He created this method of giving people uplifting experiences without using any sort of language that can be threatening to them. And he called it flow learning. And I had an experience of this in Virginia, in the deep southern part of Virginia, where people are extremely conservative at this specific location. And it was a group of intellectual naturalists. And I led them into a flow learning experience where it was right after lunch. They were very quiet, and they were very sleepy. And I aroused their energy. I led them on an activity where they had to listen to the sounds in the forest, and I gave them time alone in the forest. And at the end, this lady said, "I've never experienced myself in nature, and I've never experienced so much peace." We didn't use God, we didn't use anything, but she experienced peace. And as we know, peace is an aspect of God. And God is for everyone, but we need to make God uniquely their own according to who they are. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Rachel. I think some of you know me. And I wanted to talk tonight about mastery. I was always really intrigued by the idea of mastering something. And I remember I would watch my dad at 3 o'clock in the morning, like painting, like so focused. And he was so into what he was doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's really interesting. Like he's really mastering art. He actually even said, I'm a master of art, which I don't know if is a really positive thing, but he really believed it. And, you know, and just like I would notice the people around me, or things that I would notice were people that were mastering something. And so I was like, I want to master something. And I remember hearing someone saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to master everything? Because I want to master one thing, so I should probably want to master everything. But let me just start with makeup. And so I went to New York, and I studied makeup, and I was with a bunch of people that were so good at what they were doing and just so focused. And I would even experience myself, like when I was doing makeup, I didn't even know what was happening, and I really wanted to master this. But as I was getting more and more into it, I started to notice other things, and I was like, maybe makeup, I don't really want to go all the way deep into that and master that, because I feel like there's something else. I know, I'm gonna master yoga. So I started practicing hatha yoga and getting really into it, and I saw people doing flips and doing all of these things with their body, and I'm like, wow, they're really mastering it. And I would get injured and trying to do all of these things, and I didn't really understand, like, was I mastering it? But then I would notice that they would like talk bad about each other, or like, you know, just kind of behave in certain ways that I didn't think were mastery. So I was like, wait, I don't understand. So one day after this yoga class, the teacher was like, okay, now we're gonna meditate. And I felt like a lot of energy within me, and all of a sudden 15 minutes went by, and I was like, whoa, I now know what I want to master. I want to master my energy, because I was really able to take all that focus from the yoga or the meditation or all of that and master my energy, because that way you can master yourself. Self-mastery, that's actually what I want. So I came to Ananda, because at Ananda, there's a group of people that are also wanting to master themselves, master their energy, and really be the very highest version that they can be. And how do they do that? By meditating and tuning into the very highest version of themselves. And watching people every single day, and myself included, getting put in these crazy situations where you have no choice but to really face the deepest part of yourself, because that is the opportunity to really have self-mastery. I've been through so many experiences here that in the world, I don't know if I really would have been able to make it without drugs or alcohol. And here, I really have learned, oh my gosh, I actually can open up to this experience and expand my consciousness and really feel a part of everyone else. And I actually notice a lot of people here going through different situations that I find to be challenging, and I actually see them getting taller and bigger and lighter and brighter. And that really inspires me, because if we're wanting to be the very best versions of ourselves, then we really have to be around people that are doing that as well. I remember watching this movie once, and it was really interesting, because in this movie there was a married couple, and the man was really busy. He was a politician, he was doing this, he was doing that. He never really had time for his family. And they were going to go on a weekend retreat, and at last minute word came up, he couldn't do this retreat. And the wife was really upset, and the kids were really upset. They had all their camping gear and everything prepared, and he's like, I'm sorry, this can't happen. And that night, the wife sat by her bed and prayed to God, and she was like, God, I really want our family to be together and our family to be close. Like, that is really what I want. So life went on, things happened, and all of a sudden her husband got this really, really, really strong intuition that he needs to get a whole bunch of wood and animals and build an ark. And he's like, I mean, all of his money is being spent on getting this wood and building an ark, and this wife is watching her husband, like, you know, doing all of these things, and she's like, I don't understand, what are you doing? He's like, no, I have to do this. It's been decreed from God. This is like so important. Meanwhile, it was really tearing their marriage apart, because she was just not understanding, how do you not care about the family? Like, all of our money is going to these animals in this ark, and this is ridiculous. And he's like, I know, but I really, really, really believe in this. So after like months of this, I mean, it was really torture for this woman. She was like, you know what, I can't, I have to go. I'm done, I'm out of here. Takes the kids, leaves, goes to this bar, and she's just like sitting there, and she's watching on the news all this ridiculous things. Don't worry, the story's almost over. Watching this ridiculous things of what her husband's doing. So Morgan Freeman, who usually plays God in all movies, comes up, and he's like, hey, why are you so sad? And she's like, oh, that's my husband right there. He's like making such a big fool of himself, and this is my husband. And he's like, didn't you ask God that you wanted your family to be closer together? You know, God doesn't just give you these things. He gives you the opportunity to choose those things, to expand yourself, to create those things for yourself. And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I'm not just gonna be given mastery. I'm gonna be given the opportunities to expand myself, to choose mastery, to choose how I live my energy. I know that that's way under 10 minutes, but that's all I have to say, so thank you very much. Oh, the movie was Evan Almighty.
I'm sorry, what? Evan Almighty?
That's the sequel to Bruce Almighty.
I love those movies. They're really fun.
So, hi everyone. My name's Naba, in case you don't know me. And thank you to all those who have gone before me and all those who will come after me. The topic that I wanted to talk about is the things that I like about the spiritual path, what I appreciate about the spiritual path. But I almost chose something that Radhika recommended, which was the topic of Kalidas. And I was so impressed, actually, because we got an opportunity to brainstorm ideas, and she was like, oh, Kalidas, that's a great topic. And she, just off the top of her head, she listed, like 10 different things, ways you could, it's a great topic because you can take it in so many different directions, like how I met Kalidas, 10 things I like about Kalidas. Kalidas's 5 greatest recipes, it's like, so, maybe another time. There are 3 particular things that I really appreciate about the spiritual path that I wanted to share. And the first one is that for me, it's a reason to exist. I went through the first, when I was a little kid, my mom told this story at our, rehearsal dinner. And so if you were there, you would have heard it, but I was maybe 3 years old, and we had a loft in the house where my family was, and we were throwing these little balls, like, I don't know, little squishy balls or hacky sack type things or stuffed animals. I'm not really sure exactly what it was. But we were just having such a good time because, when you're a little kid, like throwing things and having them thrown back at you is a really fun thing. And I said to my mom during that, I was like, oh, this is the fun that God wanted us to have. It was just so inspiring to me. And I was like, oh yeah, this makes complete sense. Like it's about joy. And as I grew up, my mom would say that every once in a while, repeat the story, and I'd sort of look back on it, and I had different responses to it throughout my own spiritual evolution. I'd look at it in different ways. And when I was in high school, I was like, oh, I was so naive when I was a kid. I didn't know, life is really about more serious things. Later on, I thought, oh, when I was a kid, I really understood things a lot better than I do now. And now whenever Davy sees me, probably like for the last few months, she, I don't know, 9 times out of 10, she'll mention that story in some way. So it's a lesson. It's a lesson I still have to learn. So we exist for joy. Another thing that I appreciate about the spiritual path is that it gives us an opportunity to share joy. This is one example. Joy Masters, I think, is a great example of that. And there's so many opportunities at Ananda that you just couldn't run out of them. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about speaking a little bit, since that's what we're all sort of learning about. And, last week, just about everybody who came up and talked mentioned that they were nervous in one way or another. And my own history with being nervous in public stuff is the way, and a way that I dealt with that worked is when Nitai asked me to sing a solo at Sunday service. Pretty much everybody else was gone from the village, so there weren't singers. Swami was giving a talk that weekend in San Jose, I think, and we were driving back the night before because he was giving the service. And I got up there, and I was able to do one time through. I think I did, what's that? Lord Most High, make us channels of thy peace. And I could do it one time through, but then I started to get so nervous that I couldn't do it again. And I was like, oh, I gotta do something about that if I'm gonna ever, sing again in the future for anybody. So we started doing, or we already were maybe doing nights up at the meditation retreat. And I don't know if other people, maybe it was sort of inappropriate taking advantage of everybody, but I would just sing. every night during dinner when we did those. I would take, I would pick a song, and other people would sing too. It wasn't just me. But that helped. Just gradually with the repetition, it got easier. I also, for a little while, I was even conducting a group of young singers and helping to lead them before Ramesha thankfully came along. And I noticed something, that I got this just great, clear lesson during one of the times when we were singing, and it was at the Expanding Light, and the whole group was there, and I was conducting, which is a lot of fun. I recommend it to anyone to try it if they haven't done so before. And because you connect with an energy of an entire group. It's like, oh, it's not just me, it's this whole thing, and it's about the whole audience, and we're all part of the same energy. So I was conducting, and I noticed that as soon as I thought about myself, I was like, and I got really nervous. And then as soon as I thought, and my concentration went on to the people who were singing, that left completely, and I was like, oh, if I think about myself, it doesn't work. If I sort of open myself to greater realities, then I don't have to be nervous, because I'm not, it's like who's talking, it's not a big deal. So I appreciate the spiritual path because it gives us so many opportunities to share. Third reason I appreciate the spiritual path is because it frees us. And for us on this path, it's probably the main thing that's happening. I think different spiritual paths, sort of focus on different parts of our evolution. Like some, fundamentalist religions, those can be appropriate for people at a certain state of their own evolution. They're trying to get down the basics. Don't steal. Don't, do those bad things. And the freeing, this path gives us every opportunity of our experience as an opportunity to become more free. I was thinking about writing an article about like sports and volleyball and how you can use volleyball to help you become more free inside. Because when I was at the meditation retreat, this is another meditation retreat related story, the students there and Kamran and other people would come down to the village on Friday nights to play volleyball. And Nitai would come and also play volleyball. And Nitai and I were talking about volleyball. And isn't it interesting? You can when you do sports, you're totally engaged, and you learn a lot of good things because you learn. For instance, I've seen it in other people and particularly in myself. If I think, oh wow, that was really good, then the next game of volleyball comes around and nothing works all of a sudden. So what Nitai said was really cool. He said, I try every round of volleyball, I try just to kind of reset everything. Like, oh, whether we scored a point, whether we didn't score a point, that's great, I'll just leave it behind me. Thanks. And I don't know if this story will make sense, but it made sense to me at the time when I experienced it. I was at the Expanding Light on Sunday, and sometimes God speaks to me in metaphors because my brain is, I easily create metaphors out of things. And I saw a ladybug on a table. I was just eating by myself outside, and there's this ladybug, or maybe a man bug, I don't know, was crawling along the table, and I was thinking, oh, that's kind of like, when we're in Maya, we can go in all these different directions, and it's all kind of lateral. Like, we can go sideways, but we're not really going up or down. We're just sort of doing stuff. That's the Rajoguna, I guess, mostly. And then the ladybug crawled towards the center of the table and crawled up the pole, which was the umbrella. And of course, the pole, which goes through the table, ends in an umbrella, which encompasses, goes around everything. And so the ladybug was crawling up, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool, because it was crawling over this gold part, and I was like, oh, that's like, high, joyful experiences, and then it was crawling over this part that was a little cracked, and I was like, oh, that's like sad experiences, and it kept crawling, and it crawled out onto this little golden, like a little dowel, not a dowel, but the thing that you pull out that helps the umbrella come together. and it's like, it's like it crawled up the spine to the spiritual eye. And that's the spiritual path. It's becoming free, becoming totally free, in a way that then we can, if we choose, like the masters, we can come back and just give ourselves completely to God and completely in service to everybody. So, just to recap, my favorite things about the spiritual path gives me a reason to exist. Coming from joy, it gives me a way to share with others, to share joy with others, and it gives me a way to become free in that joy. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy we melt again. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Darshana, and I'm really happy that this evening started with that story with Master on the boat, because I'm going to put out the disclaimer that English is my second language, so I hope Master will take care of those things. Everything else can wait, but our search for God cannot. This quote by Master was my first glimpse of the spiritual path. And it was April 2008. I was visiting the meditation gardens at Lake Shrine. And I didn't know anything about Master. I didn't know anything about the path. Someone had just recommended Lake Shrine as a beautiful place where you can spend the quiet afternoon. And this quote was engraved on a little piece of wood that just kind of popped out of a bed of flowers. And I thought it was really interesting. I even took a picture of it, which I still have. But at the time, I sort of had to put it on a mental shelf, because I thought, well, everything else can wait. Okay, interesting, but my analytical mind started sorting through which things could wait and which couldn't. And, surely it couldn't be that you have to wait to get a nice house and a nice job and the husband and the children and all that. No. Those all have to be taken care of first, and then you can begin whatever search there is. So I didn't go there, and it's funny because I remember a friend of mine telling me that one of the main differences between the Western culture and the Indian culture is that in the West we first have to do, and then we can be. You have to do something in order to be happy, in order to be joyful. In India is the other way around. You start by being something, being peaceful, being happy, and then do something else from that place of being those things. So even though I wasn't there at that point, it took a little more of the, anguishing monotony, as Master calls it, of the ups and downs of being in the world, until I finally realized that everything else can and probably should wait. And that's when my real search began. And it didn't really begin by searching God, because I didn't really know how to relate to that. I didn't grow up with religion in my life, and at that point I was working in the finance industry, and God was not a word we used in our common language. Maybe just when we were watching the stock market crash, there'll be a lot of oh God. But so that wasn't something that I related to. But I did just really try to look inside and see, what is it that I'm looking for? What do I want? And these three things came up, and not necessarily so much in words as maybe just like a feeling and an energy. And the first one was that I wanted to know what truth was. I wanted to know what the purpose of life was. Is it just that we're born and then we get jobs and family and then eventually we die? Is that all that's all about? The second thing was, I felt like I wanted a deeper connection with people that are close in my life, people in general. Just everything that I felt in my life at the time was really superficial, and I wanted something deeper. And then lastly, I just felt this very overwhelming love for people in general, and I wanted to do something to help them. I wanted to be of service to others, and I didn't know how to do that, but these three things sort of just floated up, and they were really sincere. It just felt like it was a yearning of the soul that I had discovered. And soon enough, for some reason, I knew that meditation was going to be the answer to all this. I don't know why, but somebody had just maybe mastered when I was at Lake Shrine the first time. So through meditation, through wanting to learn how to meditate, I came onto this path. And within a few months of learning how to meditate, what really rounded it all up was meeting Swami Kriyananda. And by now, it was 2009, and I lived in LA, and it was a book launch, which is interesting since these days I serve at Crystal Clarity, which puts out the books published by Swamiji. And I remember the talk that night. He was talking about his own search for truth, and I just felt like he was talking to me. Everything he was talking about was what I was experiencing, and I knew in that moment that this was it. I had found what I was looking for. So a few weeks ago, some of us here, we went to LA. So we went to Lake Shrine again, and we were walking the path, and there I was again in front of the little wooden piece. Everything else can wait, but the search for God cannot. And I just thought how many things have happened in these past few years, and how different I look at those words now, just knowing that I have a path, and with so much gratitude for everything this path has given me over the last few years, and how all those three things that came to me in the beginning, they were all answered, sort of like a one-time deal. Everything was here. The teachings, the techniques that we have, everything that we do here to experience and to find truth on our own. The community, what other deeper way to connect with people than live in the same place and share these teachings with like-minded souls. And then serving others. I mean, thank God this path is about service and meditation. I mean, there's so many opportunities that you can serve others, and through others serve God and Guru. So I appreciate all these things about the path, but what I appreciate the most is the fact that it works. And, Master said that if you're making the effort, God will never let you down. And to know this, for me, is the most valuable thing that I have on the path. And I don't know it because I read it in a book. I know it because I experience it. And it doesn't happen all the time, but every once in a while you get these little glimpses, these little moments of truth when God reveals itself. And whether it's through understanding a spiritual concept a little deeper, or, doing a selfless act of service, or seeing the gift of divine friendship in one of your Guru Bhais. Any of these things, they bring you closer to God. And when I feel these moments, I know this path is real. And to me, these moments are like a string of pearls in a mala. When we meditate and we use the mala, we always start at the Guru bead, and then we just go one bead by bead until we come back, and at the end we're back at the Guru bead. And this is what the spiritual path is to me like. It just feels like we started out being one with God, and then delusion sort of swept us away. But if we have enough sincerity, we are able to come back, and we're able to find those moments. And if we hang on to those moments, and we go from moment to moment, then grace will carry us through. And when we reach to the end, we'll be back at the Guru bead, and we'll know that we are one with God.
I brought a visual aid and a quote from Master to begin. When I use my mala, I don't start at the Guru bead. I start how many Kriyas I plan to do, but maybe I heard it wrong or something. Or I'm going to try it that way. That sounds way less obligatory. You can just kind of go. Okay, so this is Master wrote an essay called How to Cultivate Divine Love. And I'm going to try to base most of what I say around what he says right here. Many people wouldn't think it even necessary to analyze what love is. They recognize love as the feeling they have for their relatives, friends, and others to whom they are strongly attracted. But there is much more to it than that. The only way I can describe real love to you is to tell you its effect. If you could feel even a particle of divine love, so great would be your joy, so overpowering you could not contain it. Think deeply about what I am telling you. The satisfaction of love is not in the feeling itself, but in the joy that feeling brings. Love gives joy. So we love love because it gives us such intoxicating happiness. So love is not the ultimate. The ultimate is bliss. God is Satchit Ananda, and he goes on and continues to melt your heart with his beautiful vibration. Realizing that love gives joy really got my mind to thinking. It's like, so love gives joy, all right? So there's these 8 aspects of God. Jesus Christ talks so much about love. I think he says faith, hope, and courage or something, but the greatest of these is love. Maybe I totally got that all wrong. But every prophet, every master creates this teaching. Jesus Christ has the Bible, all his disciples created all these great books. Master made so much stuff, and then Swamiji just blasted it out into the world, into every walk of life, to touch every heart who's willing to open to it. But what are all these prophets and masters saying? Ultimately, I would say it boils down to simplicity. It's just to love. They're all just saying love. Love God, and love God through everyone. Love God as everyone. Jyotish in a Sunday service recently was mentioning how once we are able to do what Swamiji did in his meeting with Master, where he said, yes, I will give you my unconditional love. Once we're able to do that sincerely, we will already be at our goal. The clock may have to tick a couple more times, and I think that's sort of where we're all approaching. We're just in those last ticks, those last few lives, hopefully. But ultimately you have it. If you have that unconditional love, but what is that unconditional love? It's so easy to say, yes, God, I unconditionally love you, guide me every day. And then you walk across, somebody cuts you off or is driving too slow at Ananda and you got to get to work. And you're just like, this car, this car's in front of me. And you're like, you can't honk at people at Ananda. That's just totally, I don't know if that's in the guidelines book, but it certainly should be. Because if you do honk at someone at Ananda, it's like not cool. I've never done it. But anyways, as soon as you realize though who it is, as soon as you look into the eyes of that person who is annoying you or pounding on your roof, pounding nails into it, or going too slow in front of you, you realize there's a soul there. And if you've been pledging your unconditional love to God in meditation, and you look in somebody else's eyes and try to feel, you'll be like, wait a minute, that's what I've pledged my unconditional love to. Everybody is a God. Everybody has God within them, and so we're learning how to unconditionally love God by loving everyone. And that's basically my point, and sort of what I mostly want to speak about is the love of God and the protection of the Guru. The protection of the Guru is something that I'm sure we all just, when we think of it, are just like, oh God, the protection of the Guru. If we didn't have the protection of the Guru, we would have totally walked off a cliff a long time ago, physically and spiritually. But every time I slip or something physically, I'm like, oh, Master just, saved me from a busted ankle, or maybe if I break my ankle, Master saved me from a broken leg. Anyways, my point of saying the protection of the Guru is more in consciousness. When we encounter an environment that is abrasive to us. When I went on a skateboard tour, when I first was on this path, I was totally starting to awaken to, I want quiet, I want peace, I want stillness, I want to learn how to cultivate true happiness. And I'd go on tour with all these ruskety dudes. I mean, ruskety's a term that I'm sure has never been said before. But these guys would, I was part of their pack, but so this guy on the Billabong bus, the Billabong clothing tour bus, we're traveling across country, and he goes, Money, power, respect, that's all I need in life. Money, power, respect, that's all I need in life. I was sitting in my chair, like, I was like looking for the emergency exit. Like, God, like, where am I? Like, yeah, this life of pro skateboarding is fun to travel around and experience pseudo fame from little kids who know who you are. But if I'm going to be around the vibration of money, power, respect, I went up to my friend Curtis who was saying this and I said, did you hear those lyrics? Are you singing a real song? And he's like, this is one of my favorite songs, man. Everybody needs money. Respect, you want the respect of your fellow man. And power? Come on, man. Who doesn't want to be powerful? And I was just I was really hurt. It was really a painful time for me. But I realized that pain I felt was the protection of the Guru. There isn't any way I'm going to fall into that. Like money, power, respect, that's all I need in life. That's just something that lives ago we've all transcended. And the Guru is that silent presence that we might not even have made a commitment to in this life, but guides our consciousness to be free from those things. To be, I mean, not criticizing those things, but to be sort of just loving the presence that is confused there. So, this is my visual aid, and you know, this is sort of what I call this the protection of the Guru. You might not be able to see this, but my sister made this for me for my birthday one year when I first got on the path. Master's here, and then we have Christ, Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri, Babaji, and Krishna, and then we have all these pictures of me as a baby, like in my earlier life. Here, I'll put it up to the camera in case you like want to like pause it or something. It's a really beautiful art piece. But when I looked at this, my sister put it on my bed for my birthday, and I was like, I realized she put these. There's these forces of darkness up here, these two little creatures, and they're like trying to get in, but the masters are here. And then here's me as a baby. And like me as a young boy, I didn't know who Master was, but I was like, wow, the protection of the Guru has always been with me. My sister made this. She probably didn't even have that in mind when she made this. But when I saw it, I realized that throughout my whole life, there was always a presence there keeping me away from the things that would totally blind me and take away my ability to find this path and follow this path. So I think that the love that we are essentially told to cultivate from the masters, from Swamiji, from Yogananda, whenever we get a little bit off or feel a little bit dry or a little bit out of tune, that's what's missing. And whether it be our techniques that we need to practice more with love, or maybe it's people that we need to practice loving, it's that presence that we need to cultivate more, I think. And this I've found to be true. When my meditations get a little bit more shallow, a little bit more restless, I'm like, okay, I'm looking for what I can get out of this. I need to go back and just say, I love you. This is a simple path. It's not a complex. I need to count my kriyas and make sure that I got the other techniques done before I go to bed. It's not some like checklist. It's just love. And I think that's what we see in people at Ananda who have lived here for a long time, or anyone who's followed this path for a long time. They've sort of transcended the stress of the path. Like, I gotta get this done. Like, no, I can't go to that event. I haven't done my kriyas yet. Like, it's a nice attitude, but ultimately it's stressful. It's like, I'll attend to support whatever this is about with love for God in my heart, and that will increase my love for this path. That will continue me along this path with greater attunement. When I get to my meditation later, I will still have that love. When I wake up in the morning and all throughout my dreams at night, I will concentrate on that love. And when I go to work in the morning, that love will still be there with me. And ultimately, I feel that that's what we're all trying to accomplish. And through the techniques as well. When my dad first was released from his short-term prison sentence, I had just moved to Ananda. And they asked me to go live with my dad and help him reintegrate into society. And I was like, whoa, I live at Ananda. Like, this is the place for me. Like, I can't go to Orange County and be with an ex-convict, even if it's my dad. I went to meditate that day and realized, oh, I have to leave Ananda. Like, I just knew that was my next step. So I left Ananda. I spent 9 months with my dad. And in that time, I really experienced a lot of great suffering because I was away from where I wanted to be. And my dad was totally nuts. He was on drugs and he was vacuuming the house every 20 minutes. He was going through old boxes of stuff, talking to himself about, I have no idea what. But I would be in my room trying to meditate and I'd be like, okay, what can I do, Master? Oh, I'll practice the healing prayer technique. Oh, and things would only get worse and worse and worse. And every day, oh, come out and I just would snap. I'd go nuts. And so would he. And then eventually one day, this is about 7 months into my 9-month journey, he comes up to me and says, hey, I want some money, $200. And I was like, well, what do you want $200 for? And he says, well, I'm not going to tell you. And I was like, well, then I'm not going to give you $200 because I'm responsible for your behavior and I have to report to your parole officer. And so he says, okay, well then when you go to work, your stuff's going to get thrown out on the street and you're going to have to find a new home. And I was like, okay, so what do I do? At this point, we're in a really heated argument. I go in my room and I grab my Kriya petals and I call my mom who lives across the continent. And together we prayed. She prayed in a way to Jesus that she likes to. And I said, Mom, I just realized what to do. I got to go. I hang up the phone and I call his parole officer, my dad's parole officer. The police come and they handcuff him. And I hear him call my name from the other room. He says, Tyler, like with a lot of fear in his voice. And I go running out there and the police have him detained in handcuffs. And he's just looking at me with this fear, like I can't go back, I can't go back. And when I looked into his eyes, I just felt this presence in my heart that had been absent for him. And it was love for him. I felt love for my dad in that moment. And I thought, that's what's been missing. Like, things aren't going to get better until I love him. And so within the next couple of months, I started practicing the healing technique more with love. Even this technique, when we practice with love, is much more powerful because within that next couple of weeks, I could feel a presence in the room when we would communicate with each other that was very healing for us both. Not only for him, but mostly for me. And within a month, he came to me with his little pill bottle of whatever he was on, some kind of painkillers, and said, I know I have a problem with these, but I want you to take them, I want you to be responsible for them, and I want you to only give me one when I really need one. So we helped him to get off his drugs. Coincidentally, he got off parole, and coincidentally, my time to come back to Ananda was there then. And man, I look back on it and I'm like, I couldn't have even lived at Ananda if I hadn't gone through that experience, because practicing everything that you do with love is the way of life here. And including the healing prayer technique, Kriya Yoga, the Om technique, these things only work with love. And we all know this, but I just thought I'd remind us all. And I want to close with a beautiful thing that Master wrote. It's definitely my favorite thing he ever wrote. It's called A Scripture of Love, and it's the last essay in Divine Romance. He actually starts speaking as God, and so God is speaking through Master here. He says, without speaking a word, I have loved you always. I alone can truly say I love you, for I loved you before you were born. My love gives you life and sustains you even at this moment. And I alone can love you after the gates of death imprison you, where none, not even your greatest human lover, can reach you. I am the love that dances human puppets on strings of emotions and instincts to play the drama of love on the stage of life. My love is beautiful and endlessly enjoyable when you love it alone, but the lifeline of your peace and joy is cut when instead you become entangled in human emotion and attachment. Realize, my children, it is my love for which you yearn. Those who love me as only one person, or who imperfectly love me in one person, do not know what love is. Only they can know love who love me wisely, faultlessly, completely, all-surrenderingly, who love me perfectly and equally in all, and who love me perfectly and equally as all. May Master bless and guide our efforts always. Amen.
Wow, thank you, all our speakers. That was amazing. If you remember, Master and Swamiji kind of reiterated one way to understand why God manifests creation is to share joy, expand joy, magnify joy. And when I saw each speaker up there, it was like a little scintillating piece of God's joy, of God's playing through each person in their life. And when we speak, we just share that. And just by sharing our own stories and just by our presence in front of speakers, it's just so inspiring. And we get to take that home with us, and it fuels our own practice and our own devotion. And I'm so gracious to be here tonight. And thank you to all our speakers. You guys all did really well. Yeah, it was beautiful. And thanks everyone for coming. Because when we come, we support, and if you're watching this online, thanks for watching this online. So we'll end tonight with our last kind of event, which is our guest minister, Savitri, our comforter, I think is what we're calling them. She's here to comfort us. Well, let's have a blessing first for everybody before she comforts us. So let's have all the speakers come up, and we'll just do a short blessing. And let's just take whatever we feel this evening that's inspiring, the gratitude we feel for these speakers, and let's just imagine them speaking before thousands of people, maybe more, throughout their life, and God's joy and God's inspiration and wisdom just flowing through them. And let's just take a moment to visualize that. Let's chant Om 3 times to express that and bless them.
So all of you did such a good job, thank you. And you all spoke without notes, so I'm going to use notes because I was making notes when you were talking, and there are just a few things I'd like to add to the evening. First of all, I'd like to ask Melody, I wasn't watching, how did they do with their time?
Everyone was different. Do you want me to
Well, did anybody go way over or anything? Or
just call it out?
just Kalidas. Kalidas showed us one very important thing tonight, and that is the power of a personal story. It's so gripping to go into his life, and I mean, and all of us have things like that we can share with people, can and should share with people. So I just wanted to point that out. As I was sitting there tonight, I was thinking, what is the most important quality for a public speaker to have? What would that be? Well, there obviously are many, but really I think the most important one is non-attachment. Just to be yourself, to prepare, yes, to get ready, to be as prepared as you can be, and then let it go, give it to God, use humor, talk about your points, but illustrate them with your stories, and then just let it go. Because if you can do that, if you can really do that, I think most of you really showed that you can do that tonight and last time we had our meeting too, then you can relax and you can just be with your audience. You can love them, you can feel their love. Most of the time, especially an Ananda audience, is really pulling for you. You know, they want you to do well. Now, I have spoken before audiences who didn't have that. They were more interested in seeing if you could convince them of something. And so I think as you go along with the Speakers Club, what we've been doing so far is having inspirational talks. But it would be good for you to have a little experience also in the process of teaching someone something, or convincing them how to do something new that perhaps they have not done before. For example, teaching them how to meditate, but other things also. So one of the things I brought tonight, which I'll pass around for you, is a list of just 58 of them, 58 different topics that you can choose from to give a short class. So eventually, as we go along in the Speakers Club, I hope you will consider picking out one of these. And if you can't find one on here you like, you can also find another. But boy, if you can go beyond this list, I'll take my hat off to you, because these are things that people here at Ananda and Swami and others have talked about for many, many years, different subjects that apply more directly to the spiritual path. So I'm going to let you take one and pass it around and hang on to it for future reference. Just a couple of little pointers for all of you is to please speak up when you speak. There are deaf people in the room like me. People are often losing their hearing, or they just can't hear you. In this room, sound bounces around a lot. And the one comment I would have made to at least a couple of you this evening is I really couldn't hear you as well as I would like to have done so. So this is very important. If you're giving a longer than, say, 10-minute talk, I want to remind you always to have your water here, because one of the phenomena that happens with public speakers is they often get cotton mouth. And if you could just and also it gives you a moment to pause and say, and get your thoughts together. It's a trick that public speakers learn, is to have that water right there. And Bajran's back there drinking this water. Yeah. And also, you may not know this, but it is a known fact that public speaking dehydrates you faster than any other activity you can do, including very demanding physical activities. They've proved this scientifically. So I don't know why it is. It's fear or spitting too much or whatever it is, but it is true. And that's why and the fear thing, the cotton mouth thing that comes in to a lot of people. So do remember that. 10 minutes you can usually get through it, like you were doing tonight. You did fine. But if you're going to talk a little longer than that, be sure to have your water available for you. You'll notice that's something we always provide for our public speakers here at Ananda. There's always a little water over there, whether they use it or not. It's there for them to have. And most of the time you'll notice that at some point they really do use it. One little quick assignment I'd like to give you, because I did this for myself before tonight, is to find a Swami talk. It doesn't matter what, or Treasures Along the Path, or just some Swami talk, and listen to it, but take some notes on it, sort of outline it, and watch the way he teaches. Because one thing Swami, he can talk for an hour and a half and you are never bored. I want you to find out why. Why is it this is so gripping? Why is it I really enjoy hearing this? What is he doing? Well, there's obvious things like he's projecting God and Master to us and all that, but there are many little things that I've spent years listening to Swami talk, doing just this, analyzing what is he doing to get the power that comes through him. Well, he's asking Master to flow through him, but there are other little tricks. And so I want you to see if you can make a list, or even if it's just a short list. What does he do? How does he do it? How does he find the right illustration? Or how does he get people to listen to him, and not only listen to him, but to act on what he says? Swami doesn't use, you may notice he doesn't use visual aids, which I often do. I have a whiteboard there or something. I loved Kalidas's visual aid tonight. It's something to. Swami was very simple in the way he taught, But there are certain things he did, like the way I'll give you a hint, the way he uses his voice, the way there's many things. I'd like for you to see if you can discover them. So since we are a Joy Masters Club, and I hope that we will continue on, make this a lifetime assignment, really, as often as you can. Listen for the inspiration of it, of course, but listen to see how he does that. And I think that more than anything, if there's any measure of public speaking skills that I've managed to acquire over the many, many years that I've been teaching here at Ananda, that has helped me more than anything else. It's just tuning in. It almost becomes like a subconscious thing for me that I don't have to really think too much about it. I just try to tune into the kind of the way Swami does it and try to do that. Now, at first I did that too much. I became a Swami parrot. I just thought, okay, I'm going to duplicate Swami. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to give all of his stories. I'm going to do I'm just going to be him. I'm going to get up there and just be him. Well, that didn't work at all. You have to be yourself. You do have to be yourself. All of you were manifesting this very, very beautifully. And yet, there is something that he has to offer to all of us that I hope you all will try to get those subtle nuances, then add them into your own, the way that you speak. I don't want to go on too long tonight because we've had a long evening, but I just wanted to mention one funny little thing that I noticed tonight. Did you notice this? Except for our good master of ceremonies here, by the way, but you did a wonderful job, Kamran. Nobody's sitting on the front row. Did you notice that? Okay. I've had this happen many, many times. I'm not sure how many people are going to come to class, come in and set up the chairs. Everybody gravitates to the back. Now, let me ask you, what is the reason for this? What do you think what was in your mind? Why didn't you sit on the front row? Or why don't people sit up here?
It's scary up there.
Why?
Being seen.
You think the teacher's going to call on you or something? Why is it scary? It must be.
I like a broader perspective of the room.
Yeah, you want to be back so you can see the people in the room.
This couch is mighty comfy.
I'm sorry, what?
This couch is mighty comfy.
Couch is comfy. You saw I was on the
You
couch.
can sit
I wasn't on the
in a
front
chair
row.
or with your legs crossed, so there's more diversity.
Do you think it's because it's just somehow we think it's bringing attention to ourselves by
Yes.
sitting in front?
Yes, or I'd rather just melt into the background, please, somehow, or something like this. Maybe it's from old classroom experiences of feeling like I don't want the teacher to call on me, or I want to be invisible, or, there's all sorts of fears and things involved with this sort of thing. But as a teacher, often it could be a little awkward just so, hear this. So what I'm trying to get at is don't be afraid to relate to people in your class in a really personal way. Often I've done this, especially with expanding light. People coming into the room, they're brand new, they don't know me, they don't know what I'm going to say, and there's that empty front row. Before I even start, I'll say, I wonder if you all would do me a favor. Those of you who have seen me teach at the Expanding Light, watch me do this. Would some of you be willing to come up on the front row? I'll give extra points to people who will come up and sit on the front row. And, sometimes it's slow, but usually people will do that. And if people don't, I say, okay, well then I'm not going to start class till I get rid of this front row. And I go out and just take the chairs away so that the people who are on the second row are now in the front row. I move myself forward. and that takes care of that problem. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is don't be afraid to talk to people as people. Don't make them like a block of ice statues out there that you can't say something to, or ask for questions, or relate to, or involve people in some way. Even I've noticed even going through that thing of getting the chairs like I want them for the class helps people to relax, because they can see I'm relaxed. I don't care that much. If they don't like it, that I don't like it, then nobody's in the front row, so what? It's just sort of something that's more personal and more interactive in that way. I'll just see if I have anything else that's ultimately important. It really is very, very important for you to watch your timing, and I'd like to really strongly suggest that for a speakers club, you always have a clock on the wall or on the dais here somewhere where you can really keep track of your time. It's important to start on time. It's important to end on time. Now, most of you who spoke tonight did this, but I think the best illustration of who did it was Kalidas, is have a good beginning and a good ending. He had a closure. He said, I'd like to read it. He had something definite to close with. Some of the rest of you did, but it's always good to have something at the ready just in case your time is up and you need to stop. Okay, so you can stop, but you have your bang up, this is from Master, or whatever it is, you're ready to close if you need to close, because you have a contract with the people that you're speaking to stop on time. People often have babysitters waiting somewhere or something that they need for you to honor, that you say you're going to start at a certain time and you say you're going to stop at a certain time. So hold with that. All of you tonight looked very nice. It is important. I used to wonder exactly how should I dress in relation to my audience, because I've seen often in the Toastmasters clubs and they'll have a real rigid thing. Men have to be in suits with ties and everything, and women have to be, in high heels or whatever it is. Obviously, that's not our way at Ananda. But when you think about it, what you need to think about is what probably will my audience be wearing. And then you try to go just a tiny cut above that. Definitely don't go below that. Okay. All right. So all of you looked nice, clean, nice colors. Swami was very big on colors. He wanted you to wear bright, clear, pure colors, and relate to people. Do relate to colors and the colors that you wear and that sort of thing. There are many, 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 many tips that I've learned, again, from observing Swami and from just teaching and teaching and teaching and teaching. And experience really is the best teacher. But I have to say that you're all so far out. Those of you who I've heard speak in the last two clubs, you're so far out ahead of where most of us were when we began here. It's thrilling for me. It's thrilling for all of us here at Ananda to be a part of the Ananda for the Future group. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's been my joy to be here with all of you. Thank you. And I believe, are we done, Kalidas? Do we have any announcements, or do we know when we're meeting next or anything like that?
It'll be in the first week of November.
First week of November.
The first Monday.
Yes. So again, well done all speakers, and we'll see you at the next Speakers Club.
Thanks so much.